The days following the attack were filled with preparation and vigilance. Princess Lyria had proven herself capable of leading Zephora through immediate crises, but she knew the challenges were far from over. Intelligence reports indicated that the rogue faction, though weakened, was still active, and other threats, both political and external, could emerge at any time. Lyria spent long hours in the palace reviewing trade networks, defense systems, and diplomatic relations. Her violet eyes, once timid and uncertain, now glowed with determination. Ethan remained at her side, offering insights, helping interpret reports, and lending support. His presence had become a comfort and a source of strength. Lyria found herself thinking less about her shyness and more about possibilities, how she could shape her kingdom and protect her people. For the first time, she felt that her voice could truly make a difference. One morning, a message arrived from a neighboring planet, requesting an audience with Zephora's leadership. The emissaries were known for their strict policies and diplomatic skill. They demanded guarantees that Zephora's trade routes would be secure and that no rogue factions would interfere. Failure to satisfy them could result in lost alliances and strained resources. Lyria knew this would be a critical test of her abilities. She spent hours preparing, going over data, and formulating arguments. Ethan assisted, helping her structure her points and anticipate counter-arguments. Lyria practiced speaking aloud, refining her tone and clarity. She felt the familiar flutter of nervousness but pushed it aside, focusing instead on strategy and precision. When the emissaries arrived, the council chamber was filled with tension. The Zephoran leaders greeted them formally, and the emissaries wasted no time questioning the stability of trade and security. They spoke in firm, precise tones, expecting detailed answers and proof of competence. Lyria stepped forward, her violet eyes steady. "Honored emissaries," she began, her voice calm and measured, "we are aware of the recent disruptions to our trade routes and have implemented measures to ensure safety and efficiency. Surveillance drones monitor all critical paths. Adaptive shields protect vulnerable areas, and rerouted convoys reduce predictability. We are confident that these actions will prevent further attacks and maintain stable trade relations." The emissaries exchanged glances, clearly surprised by her confidence and detailed knowledge. One, a tall figure with silver markings on their face, spoke. "And who is responsible for these measures? Are they implemented under the direction of the Palace Council, or by a single individual?" Lyria straightened. "These measures were proposed and coordinated by myself, with the support of Palace staff and advisors, including Captain Ethan Vance, who provides insight into interstellar technology and strategy. We work as a team to ensure the safety and prosperity of Zephora." There was a pause as the emissaries processed her words. The room was silent except for the hum of machinery and distant palace activity. Then slowly, one emissary nodded. "Impressive. Your understanding and foresight are remarkable. Zephora shows the competence and commitment we expected. These measures satisfy our concerns." Relief washed over Lyria, and she allowed herself a small smile. Ethan's quiet nod beside her reinforced the shared sense of accomplishment. The emissaries departed, satisfied with the arrangements, and the council praised Lyria's leadership. For the first time, she felt that her skills and voice were truly respected, not only within her palace but across the galaxy. Yet Lyria knew that respect and recognition were not the same as lasting peace. She had learned that threats could come from unexpected directions, and vigilance was always necessary. The rogue nobles, though weakened, still lingered in the shadows, waiting for opportunities to regain influence. Lyria decided to act preemptively, addressing both internal and external challenges with a comprehensive plan. She called a meeting with the loyal council members and Ethan, discussing strategies to strengthen palace security, improve communication between departments, and foster unity among the nobles. Her suggestions were precise, practical, and forward-thinking. They included training programs for palace guards, improved data analysis for trade routes, and initiatives to encourage collaboration among previously divided factions. Ethan watched her speak, admiration clear in his eyes. "You've grown so much, Lyria. Your leadership now inspires confidence, not just in me but in everyone who listens." Lyria felt a deep sense of fulfillment. "It's not just about confidence," she replied. "It's about being responsible. I want to ensure that Zephora is strong and safe, not because I am strong alone, but because we are strong together." As days passed, her initiatives took effect. Communication and coordination improved within the palace. Loyalty increased among council members, and the people of Zephora began to see their princess in a new light. Rumors of her capabilities spread quietly, but firmly, reaching even the distant corners of the planet. Shyness and invisibility were no longer part of her identity. She had become a symbol of intelligence, courage, and quiet strength. One afternoon, while walking in the gardens, Lyria encountered a small group of young nobles who had previously mocked her shyness. They approached cautiously, unsure how to address her now. Lyria paused and smiled gently. "Hello," she said. "I hope your work in the council has been going well." The nobles looked surprised by her warmth and poise. "Princess, and we wanted to apologize," one said. "We underestimated you. Your leadership and insight have proven invaluable." Lyria nodded gracefully. "Thank you. It's important to focus on the good of our planet, not personal pride. I hope we can work together moving forward." The nobles bowed slightly, and for the first time Lyria felt a sense of unity forming among her peers. Respect and collaboration were becoming more important than envy or rivalry. As evening approached, Ethan found her sitting near the glowing pond, watching the soft reflections in the water. "You've done more than I imagined," he said softly. "Zephora is stronger because of you." Lyria turned to him, her violet eyes reflecting the gentle light of the pond. "I couldn't have done it without your guidance and support. You've helped me see that I am capable of more than I believed." Ethan smiled. "You've always been capable, Lyria. You just needed to see it yourself. And now everyone else can see it too." The moment felt quiet, intimate, and full of unspoken understanding. Lyria realized how much Ethan had become a part of her life, not only as a friend and advisor, but as someone who inspired her courage and confidence. She took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the evening air and the gentle glow of the garden around them. The following weeks were filled with ongoing improvements and small victories. Lyria continued to monitor trade routes, refine defense systems, and strengthen diplomatic relations. Her bond with Ethan grew stronger, built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. Together they navigated challenges with intelligence and care, always supporting one another. One day the palace announced a formal ceremony to celebrate the recent successes and recognize contributions to Zephora's prosperity. Nobles, diplomats, and citizens gathered to witness the event. Lyria's heart pounded as she prepared to attend. She had grown comfortable in her own abilities, yet the thought of standing before so many people still carried a hint of nerves. As the ceremony began, speeches were made praising the kingdom's resilience, innovation, and leadership. When it was her turn, Lyria stepped forward, her violet eyes scanning the crowd. She took a deep breath and spoke, her voice calm, confident, and steady. She acknowledged the council, the palace staff, and Ethan, highlighting the importance of teamwork, loyalty, and thoughtful leadership. Her words resonated through the hall, and applause followed. The nobles who had once doubted her now bowed in respect. The people of Zephora looked upon their princess with admiration and gratitude. Lyria felt a deep sense of accomplishment, not for herself alone, but for the unity and progress of her planet. As the ceremony concluded, Ethan approached her. Without hesitation, he took her hand gently. "You've done it, Lyria. You've shown them and yourself what you are capable of." Lyria's heart swelled and she smiled. "Thank you, Ethan, for believing in me from the very beginning." He returned her smile, a quiet, steady warmth in his eyes. "It was never about believing. You just needed the chance to show who you really are. And now you have." In that moment, surrounded by the people of Zephora and the soft glow of the palace lights, Lyria realized the full measure of her journey. From a shy, overlooked princess to a capable, respected leader, she had grown beyond her fears. She had learned the value of courage, intelligence, and compassion. And she had discovered that genuine connection, someone who sees you for who you truly are, can change everything. That night, as the stars twinkled above the palace, Lyria stood on the balcony with Ethan. The lights of Zephora shimmered below, a reflection of the bright future ahead. For the first time, she felt entirely at peace with herself, confident in her abilities and hopeful for what was to come. The shy princess of Zephora had found her voice, her strength, and her place. And with Ethan by her side, she knew that together they could face any challenge, explore any opportunity, and shape a future full of promise, courage, and endless possibilities. She squeezed his hand gently and looked up at the stars. The galaxy was vast, mysterious, and the next morning the palace was alive with the usual flurry of servants, guards, and nobles preparing for another day of formal events. Princess Lyria awoke feeling a strange mixture of excitement and nervousness. The memory of her walk with the human diplomat, Ethan, lingered in her mind like a warm light. She had never met anyone who made her feel so seen and understood. Normally mornings were quiet and uneventful for her, spent tending to books, plants, or sketches in her chambers. But today felt different. She dressed carefully, choosing a simple gown of pale blue that mirrored the early morning sky. Unlike the elaborate gowns worn by her siblings, hers was modest and understated. She preferred it that way, blending into the background instead of drawing attention. As she adjusted the fabric at her shoulder, she caught her reflection in the mirror. Her violet eyes, usually shy and downcast, seemed a little brighter today. A small, uncertain smile crossed her face. Downstairs, the palace gardens awaited, bathed in the soft glow of morning light. Lyria moved through the corridors quietly, careful not to bump into servants or courtiers. When she reached the gardens, she found Ethan already there, leaning casually against the railing by the glowing pond. His green eyes lit up when he saw her. "Good morning, Princess Lyria," he said warmly. "I hope I'm not interrupting your morning peace." Lyria shook her head. "Not at all. I wanted to come here anyway." Ethan stepped closer, his presence calm and comforting. "I'm glad. It's a beautiful morning. And I wanted to see you again." Her cheeks flushed slightly, but she smiled. "I'm glad too." They walked together along the paths, passing silver-leafed trees that shimmered faintly under the sun. Lyria pointed out flowers and rare plants, explaining which ones were her favorites and why. Ethan listened intently, asking questions and commenting on the beauty he had never seen on Earth. His genuine curiosity made Lyria feel proud of the things she loved, as if they suddenly had value beyond her own small world. As they walked, Ethan noticed something unusual. "You seem happier than yesterday, more confident." Lyria laughed softly. "I don't know if I'm confident. I just felt like someone finally saw me. Maybe that makes a difference," Ethan nodded. "It does. Sometimes all it takes is one person to notice you for who you really are. And I think that person doesn't have to be anyone special, just someone willing to listen and understand." Lyria considered this, glancing at him. She realized he was right. She had spent so long hiding that she had almost forgotten what it felt like to be noticed. With Ethan, it was effortless. They continued their walk in silence for a while, enjoying the peaceful sounds of the gardens, the soft hum of alien insects, the gentle rustle of the silver leaves, and the distant splash of water in the ponds. It was a rare moment of calm, away from the pressures of court life, where Lyria could be herself without judgment. After some time, Ethan stopped near a small bridge that arched over a stream glowing with bioluminescent algae. He looked down at the water and then back at Lyria. "Would you like to see something interesting?" he asked. Lyria's curiosity was piqued. "Yes, what is it?" He reached into his bag and pulled out a small device, rectangular with glowing symbols on its screen. "It's called a star map. It shows the positions of stars and planets in real time. I brought it with me from Earth. I thought you might like to see the stars from a human perspective." Lyria's eyes widened. She had always loved stargazing, but had never seen the stars in this way. Ethan set the device on the bridge and activated it. The screen projected a holographic map of the galaxy, showing Zephora's position among distant stars and planets. Lines connected constellations and small dots moved across the map, representing spacecraft and distant celestial bodies. "This is amazing," Lyria whispered, leaning closer. "I've never seen anything like this." Ethan smiled. "I thought you might like it. I wanted to share something I love, and I wanted to see what you think." For a long while, they studied the stars together. Lyria pointed out her favorite constellations, and Ethan explained the human names for each one. They talked about distant planets, the possibilities of other life, and the dreams they held for the future. Lyria found herself speaking more freely than she ever had, her shyness melting away in the presence of someone who truly listened. Eventually, their conversation was interrupted by a messenger rushing through the gardens, carrying a scroll sealed with the palace insignia. Ethan stepped back politely, and Lyria unfolded the scroll with trembling hands. It was an invitation from the palace council for her to attend a formal meeting later that day. a rare honor, and a rare responsibility. I should go, she said reluctantly. I have duties to attend. Ethan nodded. I understand, but I hope we can continue our walk later. There's still so much I want to show you. Lyria smiled, feeling a warm glow in her chest. I would like that. As she returned to the palace, Lyria felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. The council meeting would be daunting. She had never spoken in front of so many important figures, and the thought of standing among the confident, sharp-tongued nobles made her stomach twist. Yet she also felt a newfound courage. Ethan had reminded her that her voice mattered, that she had ideas and thoughts worth sharing. The meeting room was vast, filled with holographic displays and rows of seated council members. Lyria entered quietly, her head slightly bowed, and took her place among the other dignitaries. Whispers rippled through the room. Some council members looked surprised to see her there. Others merely glanced and returned to their papers. Lyria's heart pounded, but she drew a deep breath and remembered Ethan's words. Your voice matters. When the meeting began, Lyria listened carefully, taking note of the discussions and proposals. When it came time for her to speak, she hesitated for a moment, feeling the weight of so many eyes upon her. Then she thought of Ethan, of the calm, supportive smile he had given her in the garden, and she took a deep breath. Honored council members, she began softly, her voice quivering at first. I have observed the matters before us and would like to offer my perspective. Her words were simple but thoughtful. She suggested ideas to improve planetary trade routes, environmental protections for Zephora's rare flora, and educational programs to foster cultural exchange with other planets. As she spoke, her confidence grew. The council members, initially skeptical, began to nod and take notes. Lyria could not help but feel a small thrill of pride. She was being heard. After the meeting ended, she retreated to the gardens again, her mind still buzzing with the events of the day. She found Ethan waiting in their usual spot. How did it go? He asked gently. Lyria smiled, her eyes bright. Better than I expected. They listened. Really listened. I never thought they would. Ethan nodded, his green eyes sparkling. I knew you could do it. You just needed to believe in yourself. They spent the rest of the afternoon exploring a part of the gardens Lyria had never visited. Hidden pathways led them to a small waterfall that glowed with soft blue light, reflecting in the pond below. Lyria dipped her hand in the water, giggling at the cool touch, and Ethan followed suit. For a while, they simply enjoyed the quiet, the simple pleasure of being together without judgment or expectation. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Lyria felt a sense of peace she had never known. She realized that her life could be more than quiet observation and loneliness. With Ethan by her side, she could explore, learn, and even step into the world without fear. She could be herself, and that was enough. When it was time to part ways, Ethan took her hand once more, giving it a gentle squeeze. I'll see you tomorrow? He asked. Yes, Lyria replied firmly, feeling her voice stronger than before. Tomorrow. As she watched him walk away, she felt a spark of hope ignite within her. The shy, overlooked princess was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, someone could truly see her for who she was, and that the world might not be as frightening as she had always thought. And for the first time in her life, Princess Lyria felt the possibility of a future filled with friendship, courage, and discovery. The days that followed were unlike any Princess Lyria had ever experienced. With Ethan's encouragement and gentle presence, she felt more confident than she had in her entire life. She spent hours walking in the palace gardens, exploring hidden corners and learning about human ways of thinking and problem-solving. Ethan was patient and curious, never judging her shy tendencies but helping her find her voice. It was in these moments, away from the formalities of court, that Lyria discovered her own strength. Yet, not everyone in the palace welcomed her growing confidence. The nobles, who had long dismissed her as quiet and timid, began to watch her with suspicion. Whispers followed her through the halls. Some said she was being manipulated by the human. Others claimed she was stepping beyond her place. Lyria could feel their eyes on her, cold and judging, but she refused to let it stop her. She remembered Ethan's words, "Your voice matters." She clung to them like a lifeline. One morning, Lyria awoke to a message delivered by her usual maid. It was from the palace council. An urgent session had been called to discuss trade routes and alliances with neighboring planets. This was an important matter, one that affected the entire kingdom of Zephora. Lyria's heart pounded. Speaking in such a formal setting had always terrified her, but she knew she could not refuse. She dressed carefully in a gown of deep violet, a color that symbolized wisdom and dignity in Zephyran culture. As she entered the council chamber, she felt the weight of dozens of eyes upon her. Some council members smirked as if expecting her to falter. Her siblings sat nearby, their confident postures and calm expressions a stark contrast to her own nervousness. Lyria took a deep breath, recalling the quiet strength she had discovered while walking with Ethan in the gardens. She reminded herself that knowledge and thoughtfulness were just as powerful as loud voices and bold gestures. The session began. Council members spoke at length, presenting arguments about trade routes, planetary alliances, and resource management. Lyria listened carefully, taking notes and observing patterns. When it was her turn to speak, she rose slowly, her hands trembling slightly. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of those who doubted her, and then imagined Ethan's encouraging smile. "Honored council members," she began, her voice soft but steady. "I have reviewed the proposed trade routes and alliances. I believe we can improve efficiency and strengthen our relationships with neighboring planets by adjusting the current plans." A few council members raised their eyebrows, surprised by her directness. Lyria continued explaining her reasoning with clear logical points. She suggested new routes that reduced travel time, proposed safety measures for transport ships, and highlighted opportunities for cultural exchange that had been overlooked. As she spoke, her confidence grew. Her words were precise, thoughtful, and informed. By the time she finished, the room was quiet. The council members, initially skeptical, began nodding in agreement. One elder, a stern Zephyran with silver hair and a reputation for being unyielding, leaned forward. "Princess Lyria," he said, "your insights are impressive. You have considered factors that many of us overlooked. This is valuable work." Lyria felt a rush of pride tempered by humility. She had done what she thought was impossible. She had been heard and her ideas were respected. After the session, as the council dispersed, whispers followed her. Some were admiring, others questioning, but Lyria no longer felt fear. She had discovered that her mind and perspective mattered. Outside the chamber, Ethan waited, his green eyes bright with pride. "You did it," he said simply. "You spoke with confidence and clarity. I knew you could." Lyria smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest that went beyond pride. "It wasn't just me," she replied. "Your encouragement helped me. I felt like I could do it because you believed in me." Ethan shook his head gently. "No, Lyria, you always had this strength. I just reminded you of it." For the next few days, Lyria continued to spend time with Ethan, exploring not only the gardens but also the palace archives. The archives were filled with ancient texts, technological schematics, and star charts that few had ever seen. Lyria's curiosity was insatiable. She asked questions, studied diagrams, and even began experimenting with simple mechanical devices under Ethan's guidance. Her mind, once quiet and reserved, now buzzed with ideas and possibilities. It was during one of these sessions that Lyria discovered an old record of her planet's ancient defense systems. The schematics showed a series of hidden energy shields and automated drones designed to protect the palace and city in case of attack. Lyria's eyes lit up with excitement. She had always loved puzzles, and this was the most intriguing puzzle she had ever seen. Ethan noticed her enthusiasm. "You're really good at this," he said. "Most people wouldn't even know where to start." Lyria shook her head, laughing softly. "I've always been interested in how things work. I just never thought it mattered." Ethan smiled. "It matters now. And it might matter more than you realize." Lyria didn't understand his words at the time, but she soon would. A few days later, a crisis emerged. A group of rogue nobles, resentful of Lyria's growing influence, began plotting against her. They believed she was too quiet, too inexperienced, and that her ideas threatened their control over the palace council. Using forged documents and false reports, they attempted to discredit her proposals and undermine her credibility. Lyria first heard of the scheme through whispers in the corridors, but it wasn't long before she received a direct warning from a loyal advisor. "They are planning something," the advisor said, his voice low. "They want to embarrass you at the next council session using lies and deception. You must be careful. Lyria's stomach twisted. Fear rose, but she refused to panic. Instead, she thought of the archives and the ancient defense systems she had studied with Ethan. Knowledge was power, and she would use every bit of it to protect herself and her ideas. The next council session arrived. The chamber was tense, filled with nobles eager to see Lyria fail. The rogue faction presented false reports of mismanaged trade, errors in her calculations, and claims that her proposals would endanger the kingdom. Murmurs of agreement spread through the room, and some council members looked ready to dismiss her outright. Lyria took a deep breath, recalling Ethan's steady presence in the gardens and the confidence she had felt while speaking before. She stood tall and began to speak, her voice clear and unwavering. Honored council members, I have reviewed these reports. Some contain inaccuracies and assumptions that do not reflect reality. Allow me to present the correct data and my recommendations. Using detailed notes, charts, and her understanding of the planet's infrastructure, Lyria methodically addressed each false claim. She explained her calculations, corrected errors, and demonstrated how her proposals would benefit Zephora. The council members listened, some skeptically at first, but as her explanations continued, the evidence became undeniable. One by one, the rogue nobles' accusations unraveled. Their lies could not withstand the clarity of Lyria's reasoning. By the end of the session, the council members applauded her insights, acknowledging her intelligence and foresight. The rogue faction was exposed and their influence weakened. After the meeting, Lyria returned to the gardens, her heart racing but triumphant. Ethan was waiting, leaning casually against a tree. You were incredible, he said. You faced them and didn't let fear control you. That's true strength. Lyria smiled, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. I never thought I could do something like that, she admitted. I always believed I was too shy, too quiet to make a difference. Ethan shook his head. You were never too shy. You just needed the chance to show your true self. And now everyone can see it. For the first time, Lyria realized that her shyness was not a weakness. It was part of who she was, but it did not define her limits. Her mind, her creativity, and her courage were far stronger than anyone had believed. As the sun set, painting the gardens in shades of orange and pink, Lyria and Ethan sat by the glowing pond in comfortable silence. Lyria dipped her hand into the water, watching the ripples spread across the surface. I feel different, she said softly. I feel like I can do more than I ever imagined. Ethan reached over and lightly squeezed her hand. You can, Lyria, and you will. I believe in you. She looked at him, her violet eyes reflecting the last rays of sunlight. Thank you, Ethan, for everything. He smiled, a quiet and steady presence beside her. No thanks needed. You earned this yourself. As night fell over Zephora, the stars began to twinkle in the sky above. Lyria gazed upward, feeling a sense of possibility stretching out before her. The palace, once a place of fear and isolation, now seemed full of opportunity. She had faced doubt, intrigue, and deception, and she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident than ever before. And she knew, deep in her heart, that this was only the beginning. The palace of Zephora had always been a place of elegance and order, but over the past weeks it had grown tense. Whispers of doubt and envy had shifted into quiet plotting. Even though Princess Lyria had proven herself capable during council sessions, the rogue nobles who had tried to undermine her had not given up. They were careful now, hiding their plans behind polite smiles and polite words. But their intentions were clear to those who watched closely. Lyria knew she could not ignore them. She spent the morning in the palace archives, poring over records of the palace's defense systems and historical reports of past crises. Her violet eyes scanned diagrams and star charts, comparing notes and thinking about strategies. Ethan had joined her, his green eyes following her movements with interest. You've become quite the strategist, he said, leaning against a shelf. Most people would be overwhelmed by all these records. Lyria smiled faintly, a spark of determination lighting her face. I have to be prepared. They won't stop at whispers. If they want to challenge me again, I need to be ready. Ethan nodded. Then we'll face it together. You know I'll help you however I can. The peaceful morning was soon interrupted by an urgent message from the palace council. A series of supply convoys traveling between Zephora and neighboring planets had been attacked. Some ships had been destroyed and vital resources were lost. Panic began to ripple through the palace. The council summoned Lyria, hoping to hear her insights, though many were skeptical that a young, shy princess could provide a solution. Lyria entered the council chamber, her violet eyes calm and focused despite the tension. Ethan followed quietly, acting as a silent support. The chamber was buzzing with urgent conversation as council members debated who was responsible for the attacks and what should be done to prevent further losses. Princess Lyria, one elder began, his voice laced with doubt. This situation is dangerous. We cannot afford mistakes. Do you have any recommendations? Lyria took a deep breath, her mind racing. She had studied the ancient defense systems and the current trade routes extensively. She knew that a strategic approach, combining intelligence with technology, could protect the convoys and prevent further loss. I believe I have a plan, she said, her voice clear and steady. We need to combine surveillance drones with adaptive defense shields along key routes. By monitoring the paths in real time, we can detect threats early and respond immediately. Additionally, rerouting some convoys to less predictable paths will make it difficult for attackers to anticipate their movements. Some council members murmured in surprise, impressed by the detail in her recommendations. Others looked skeptical, their doubts hidden behind polite nods. Lyria continued, explaining step by step how the shields could be deployed, how the drones would relay information, and how the new routing system would minimize risks. Her explanation was precise, logical, and backed by data she had meticulously gathered from the archives. Ethan watched quietly, his pride for her growing with each word. He knew that Lyria's intelligence and careful planning would be the key to resolving the crisis. When she finished, the chamber was silent for a moment, the weight of her ideas settling in. Finally, one elder spoke. This plan is remarkable. It addresses the immediate threat and strengthens our defenses for the future. Princess Lyria, your insight is invaluable. Even the skeptics could not deny her reasoning. Orders were immediately given to implement her strategy. Within hours, surveillance drones were deployed along critical trade routes, adaptive shields were activated, and convoys were rerouted. Lyria oversaw the operations with Ethan by her side, monitoring the situation and making adjustments as needed. The first night of implementation was tense. Lyria barely slept sitting in the control room as reports streamed in from the drones. A small alarm sounded, indicating an unauthorized vessel approaching one of the convoys. Lyria's heart raced, but she stayed calm, issuing commands to activate shields and alert patrol ships. The convoy was protected, and the attackers were driven away without damage. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. You did it. You stayed calm and made the right decisions. That's incredible. Lyria smiled faintly, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. It's only the beginning. We have to stay vigilant. Over the next several days, Lyria continued to monitor the convoys and adjust strategies as needed. The rogue nobles, realizing that their attempts to undermine her had failed, grew frustrated. They whispered among themselves, plotting to discredit her again. However, the council and palace staff, witnessing her competence and calm leadership, now supported her more than ever. Lyria's quiet determination and intelligence had earned respect that could not be ignored. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lyria and Ethan walked through the palace gardens, their steps slow and reflective. The glowing plants and soft hum of alien insects created a peaceful atmosphere, a stark contrast to the tension of the past days. You've changed everything, Ethan said softly. The council, the palace, even the people, everyone sees you differently now. Lyria shook her head. I didn't do it alone. I had your support, and I had the knowledge I could use. I never imagined I could handle something like this. Ethan smiled. You didn't just handle it. You led with wisdom and courage. That's more than most people could do. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alert from the palace security system. An intruder had breached one of the outer gates. Lyria's eyes narrowed, and she immediately directed Ethan to follow her to the control room. Reports indicated a group of attackers moving toward the city, likely attempting to disrupt the palace operations and test her defenses. Lyria's mind raced, but she did not panic. Drawing upon her knowledge of the defense systems, she issued commands to deploy drones, activate energy shields, and alert the palace guards. Every action was calculated, precise, and effective. Ethan assisted, relaying information from sensors and communication networks. Together, they coordinated the response, guiding the defenders to intercept the intruders. The attack was brief, but intense. Lyria's planning and quick thinking ensured that no lives were lost and the intruders were captured. The council praised her decisiveness and ingenuity. Even the most skeptical nobles had to acknowledge her skill and courage. As the palace returned to calm, Lyria and Ethan sat quietly in the gardens, exhausted but relieved. "It's over," Ethan said, leaning back against a glowing tree. "You did it again. You protected everyone." Lyria took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past days lift slightly. "I couldn't have done it without you. You helped me see that I could do more than I thought." Ethan smiled gently. "You don't need me to be strong, Lyria. You have the strength within you, I just remind you of it." Lyria felt a warmth in her chest, a feeling she had never known before. The shy princess who had once hidden in the corners of the palace now stood as a capable leader, admired and respected by those who had doubted her. Yet more than the recognition or the praise, she cherished the quiet bond she shared with Ethan, a friendship built on trust, understanding, and genuine care. Days passed, and the palace settled into a new rhythm. Lyria continued to study, explore, and lead, her confidence growing with each challenge. She and Ethan spent their time together in the gardens, archives, and observation towers, learning from one another and planning for the future. The people of Zephora began to see her not just as a quiet princess, but as a wise and courageous leader, someone capable of guiding the kingdom through uncertainty. One night, as the stars twinkled brightly above the palace, Lyria and Ethan stood on the balcony overlooking the city. The lights of Zephora glimmered like a sea of stars, reflecting the promise of the future. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" Lyria asked softly, her violet eyes reflecting the starlight. Ethan looked at her thoughtful. "Every day. But I also know that whatever comes, you'll be ready. You've proven that." Lyria smiled faintly. "I hope so. I've learned that I can face challenges I never imagined. I want to make a difference, for everyone." "You already are," Ethan said quietly. "You've changed this palace, this council, and even the way people see themselves. That's a difference that matters." As they stood together, the night air cool and calm around them, Lyria realized something profound. Her journey had begun with shyness and uncertainty, but it had led her to courage, wisdom, and connection. With Ethan by her side, she felt capable of facing any challenge, no matter how great, and somewhere deep within her, she knew that the true tests were still ahead. The rogue nobles had been thwarted, but the universe was vast, full of unknown dangers and opportunities. Lyria would need every ounce of her intelligence, bravery, and compassion to navigate what was coming next. For now, though, she allowed herself a moment of quiet triumph. She had faced threats, protected her people, and discovered the strength within herself. And as she looked up at the stars, she felt a sense of hope and possibility stretching out before her, vast and infinite. The shy princess of Zephora was no longer just a figure hidden in the palace shadows. She was a leader in her own right, a mind sharp and a heart brave, ready to face the challenges of the galaxy. And with Ethan's steady support, she knew she could reach even greater heights. Princess Lyria sat on the edge of the balcony, her small hands gripping the carved railing as she looked out over the sprawling city of Zephora. The sun was setting, casting long orange and pink streaks across the sky, making the tall towers glitter like stars fallen to the ground. The air was warm but carried a faint metallic scent, a reminder of the advanced technology woven into every part of her planet. Despite the beauty, Lyria felt alone. She had spent most of her life behind walls and curtains, hidden away from the crowds of nobles and diplomats who filled the palace halls. Inside the palace, the grand ballroom was alive with music and conversation. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, their light reflecting off the polished floors. Lyria could hear laughter from afar, the kind of confident, loud laughter that drew attention and respect. She had always admired it from a distance. She, however, could never join in. Speaking to strangers made her palms sweat, and large gatherings made her chest tighten. She preferred quiet corners and whispered words. To the nobles, she was invisible. The princess, who rarely appeared in public and never made a show of herself, was considered weak, awkward, or even unworthy of attention. Lyria sighed and leaned her forehead on the railing, watching the people below. Nobles mingled with dignitaries from other planets, their bright garments flowing like rivers of color. She could see her siblings laughing together, commanding the attention of everyone in the room. They were everything she was not, bold, charming, and confident. The thought made her stomach twist. She had tried many times to approach others, to join in conversations, but her words always came out wrong or too quiet to hear. She had learned to stay out of the way, to watch and listen, and to dream that someday someone might notice her for who she really was. A soft sound behind her made her turn. It was her maid, a small Zypherin with delicate wings that shimmered in the fading sunlight. "Your Highness," the maid said gently, "the dinner is about to start. Would you like to come in?" Lyria shook her head, forcing a small smile. "Not yet, I want a little time alone." The maid nodded, understanding, and retreated quietly. Lyria returned her gaze to the city, wishing she could be like the birds that flew freely in the sky. She longed for a friend who would see her not as a shy princess, but as someone real, someone worth knowing. As she leaned over the balcony, a shadow fell across her. Startled, she turned her head and saw a young human standing there. He was tall, with short brown hair and curious green eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. Unlike the Zypherin nobles who wore elaborate, colorful garments, he was dressed simply, in a neat uniform that marked him as a visitor. "Hello," he said with a friendly smile, holding out his hand. "I'm Ethan. I'm new here." Lyria blinked. Most people in the palace would have ignored her, but this human had looked straight at her. His voice was calm and warm, and there was no hint of judgment in his eyes. She hesitated, unsure what to do. Taking a stranger's hand was bold, even reckless, but there was something in the way he smiled that made her heart flutter. I'm Lyria," she whispered, finally lifting her hand to meet his. Ethan's smile widened. "Lyria. That's a beautiful name." For the first time that day, Lyria felt a spark of something she had never felt before. Comfort. Someone had noticed her, not for her rank or her appearance, but for herself. She pulled her hand back gently, feeling a little shy, but Ethan did not let go. He simply nodded and said, "Would you like to walk with me?" She hesitated. The palace was large and full of people, and stepping into the open felt dangerous. But something inside her stirred. Perhaps this human would not laugh or turn away. Perhaps he would really see her. She nodded slowly, and together they walked into the gardens. The palace gardens were vast, filled with plants that glowed faintly under the evening sky. Some flowers had petals that shimmered like glass, while others released soft puffs of colored mist. Lyria loved this place. It was quiet, safe, and magical, a world apart from the crowded palace halls. Ethan followed her lead, careful to stay close but not crowd her. "This place is incredible," he said, looking around. "It's like nothing I've ever seen on Earth." Lyria smiled slightly. "It's peaceful here. I come here when I want to think." Ethan nodded. "I can see why. You don't seem like someone who enjoys loud parties or big crowds." She laughed quietly, a sound she rarely made. I don't. I never know what to say, and I always feel like I make mistakes." Ethan tilted his head thoughtfully. "I think the people who matter don't care about mistakes. They care about kindness, curiosity, honesty. I can see all of that in you." Lyria felt her cheeks warm. Nobody had ever spoken to her like that before. Most of the nobles only whispered about her shyness or avoided her altogether. To hear someone acknowledge her as a person, someone capable and worth noticing, was almost overwhelming. They walked deeper into the gardens, passing glowing ponds and silver-leafed trees. Lyria began to relax, talking softly about the flowers she liked and the stars she loved to watch at night. Ethan listened, asking questions and showing genuine interest. He didn't interrupt or correct her. He simply listened. Time passed, though it felt like only minutes. Soon the palace bells rang, signaling the start of dinner. Lyria glanced at the sky, where stars were beginning to twinkle. She knew she had to return to the ballroom, but she didn't want the moment to end. Ethan noticed her hesitation. "You don't have to go back just yet," he said gently. "We can stay a little longer if you want." Lyria shook her head, a small frown forming. I should. They will notice I'm gone." Ethan smiled. "I understand, but I hope we can meet again." "I'd like that very much," her heart fluttered. "I'd like that too," she whispered. As they walked back to the palace, Lyria realized something she had never thought before. Maybe she didn't have to be invisible. Maybe someone could see her for who she really was. And maybe, just maybe, that someone could change everything. That night, as she lay in her chambers, Lyria couldn't stop thinking about Ethan. His presence was like a light in the darkness, gentle but undeniable. She didn't know if he would stay or if their paths would cross again, but for the first time in her life she felt hope. And deep inside, a small, shy smile formed on her lips.